The Grand Exchange is the next target jagex set their sights on to get a little spruce up with the road to restoration. It's not a well-guarded secret that there are multiple issues with the current version of it, maybe most prominently the delayed item prices, causing items to be listed with wildly inaccurate pricings, with the side effect that it allows swapping markets like LEGG to manipulate prices for their own advantage. The RS guy, Ryan, recently created a trading index to try and combat the third-party abuse, but as jagex agrees, this shouldn't be the player's responsibility. So, with the latest block in Runescape's Road to Restoration, the team over at jagex talks about their plans to address Runescape's most prominent economical challenge. Let's take a little dive into their plans and if the new era of the game will truly be a place of safer trading. Oh, and I might have another addition to the Grand Exchange that wasn't mentioned in the blog and that can change the landscape of item prices for the better. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, as we're still trying to get to 15k subscribers by the end of the year. And enough yapping, my name's Chevalric, and let's talk about the Grand Exchange. I do really want to point something out before we get into the nitty-gritty of things, and that's the fact that it feels like the Grand Exchange hasn't been updated since its release in 2007. Which pretty much is true, as jagex states it in the blog, and that besides some minor tweaks here and there, nothing fundamental has changed. No wonder we can't get prices right then. I did think it was funny, so I did want to mention it. Within the blog, jagex outlines 3 major issues that they have found being brought up over and over and over again within the community. Buying or selling items is a slow process that is not particularly transparent. Quite often, you may find yourself putting up offers multiple times before being successful. And the second one being that the Grand Exchange itself has performance issues when it comes to reflecting the most recent economy with a degree of accuracy. Quite often, there will be significant lag between what the GE tells you something is worth and what players are currently trading it for. jagex has even seen cases where the display GE price could be off target by as much as 300%. 300%? They sure did their proper research on this, did they? Didn't they watch the A Friend video where he sold bronze fire arrows for like 1 million GP each? Sure, this is very much an outlier, and I can see a lot of average cases being off target by 300%. And in general, to me at least, these 2 issues kind of sound like the same one. There's no way to figure out what you are selling or buying things for at a reasonable price, which makes the trading process feel clunky. Judging by what the team is saying with this, and quite frankly, how I feel about it as well, is that they want to make it easier for you to go to the Grand Exchange, look at the average price, and have an accurate indicator on what something is going to cost you or what it will bring you in when you sell it. This is not just important for all our current players, but also super important for new and returning players, as it can be very confusing and quite frankly quite frustrating getting a drop that you think is worth quite a bit, only to find out that it doesn't sell on the GE. Not knowing that the prices might not be right and that these items are being bought for far lower amounts than it's advertised. Sure, I don't think this will make people quit on the spot, but it also is not a great impression of the game, right? Giving them the idea that the economy is fully dead, which is just not true. It just isn't accurately depicted. Whilst new players deal with the earlier mentioned issues, us current players have been dealing with a completely different one. Merching. Price checking websites like LE.gg. Allegedly, of course. This website allowed you to look up more accurate prices for higher end items within Runescape to see their quote-unquote true value. Whilst there are all sorts of controversies surrounding LE, like allegations of them trying to merge the players, meaning that they'd allegedly list items at lower prices than they truly were to then sell them back for higher listed prices themselves, and more recently, the situation where they locked out their previously open website behind a code that could only be generated by joining their Discord server. Whilst there's a lot to say regarding LE and all the allegations, I would like to give them some credit, however. Their prices were a better depiction of what items were truly worth than was given within Runescape itself. And that just kinda shows how bad this situation has gotten. The RS guy also recently launched his own price index platform, geprice.com, trying to better depict prices within Runescape till the Grand Exchange changes come into play and hopefully get shut down by those. Well, those were Ryan's words in the short announcing this website. Come to think about it, aren't all his videos shorts in a way? Anyway, one of the major differences between RSGuy's platform and Ellie is that it is fully transparent on who submitted the prices, as your RuneScape name will be attached to it. This might not sound like a major difference, but it actually sets off quite an interesting psychological phenomenon. When people report information with their name attached, they tend to filter out what they say. They become more aware of how they'll be perceived and judged, with increased social desirability bias and self-protection. In other words, they're often more diplomatic to not draw attention to themselves. This doesn't mean that they will be fully honest, and especially not if it's just a RuneScape name attached to it or a Discord name instead of a government name. But regardless of that, research has shown that having some sort of name attached to something like this versus none at all does increase the honesty, accountability, and fear of consequences for the person in question. Even if it's just a RuneScape name, if people find out you are trying to merge them on a website like this, you might get banned from it. Or at least make a name for yourself within the community that people just don't trust anymore when you report the prices. Alright, a bit of a detour there, but what is jagex trying to do to shut down Ryan's GE price website and Ellie.gg for good? There are a few parts to it. First of all, they are simply going to improve the accuracy of what the prices are within the game. Simply put, that cabbage you pick up will indicate a far more accurate price than it does right now. jagex didn't specify this part in the blog, but as it stands, the GE updates prices depending on the trade volume. Something like a law rune that is traded often in high volumes gets its prices updated roughly every 24 hours. This is why when you put in the offer for a law rune at mid price, it will most likely instantly buy. Yet other, lower volume traded items, like a specific scrimshaw or a high tier weapon, might only get their prices updated once every few days, or in certain cases, even weeks. So by the time the price does get updated, the price pretty much has already changed. I'm assuming that they will simply change the frequency of when items are being updated to avoid this problem. Honestly, it was something I would have loved to see in the blog, because they talk about wanting to make this system better, but not exactly how they're gonna do it. As I remember, an old school RuneScape livestream a few years ago, which used the same system and tech as RuneScape 3's Grand Exchange at the time, but since updated, they mentioned that the old system couldn't handle more frequent price updates, so they had to update it. So I'm assuming that the simple fix, well on paper, is to get the prices to update more frequently. There's another thing jagex is considering on adding, to further improve the visibility of pricing. This is whether the Grand Exchange should display buy and sell volumes and price trends of items over a set number of days, 1, 7 or 30 days. Pretty much like this graph I'm showing you on screen from the wiki, but with accurate pricing. This will show you how many items have been traded and for what prices to even better indicate what the true prices are. Whilst this feature won't affect your everyday purchases, like runes, food and other supplies, this would be super handy for volatile items like new weapons from bosses or just new releases in general, as day 1 prices can range between 500 mil and 5 billion GP, and even with an updated system, there is no way jagex can keep track of this. If we have a graph system like they mentioned implementing, this would help players better guess what the prices are of such items at that moment in time. Their aim is to add this extra information to the game itself, but they're also looking at maybe having some of this data directly added to the official RuneScape wiki, or maybe even that Grand Exchange page that I don't think they even know exists anymore. As it stands right now, they are still weighing their options, as they also don't want to overcomplicate the GE interface with graphs and all sorts of possible clutter. In my opinion, they should look at adding an actively traded price to the interface, which is a RuneLife feature in old school RuneScape, which I'm showing you on screen right now. This will also never be 100% accurate. It does, however, give you a very good indicator on what the prices truly are at that moment in time. Then, if you want the graphs with the trade volumes, prices, and whatever else you can think of, you can go to the RuneScape wiki or the official Grand Exchange page on the RuneScape website, whichever they decide to use. And then go look at them, of course. The only thing that I would add to the Grand Exchange interface, maybe next to the actively traded price, is a question mark icon or whatever the hell they want to add as an icon, which you can click on to be directly referred to the page where the extra information like the graphs and all the other stuff you want to know is actually put on. Whilst it would be nice to have this in-game, I mainly see this as an overcomplication for your average player that just wants to buy and sell things on the Grand Exchange. Imagine opening the interface and seeing a graph next to the item that shows volumes and prices and whatnot. That would just scare someone shitless because they feel like they're back in economy class in school, and no one wants to go back to economy class in school, do they now? The people who want this extra information can simply just click the question mark icon and your average player will still know what the prices roughly are due to the actively traded price indicator. Finally, there's one final point jagex addresses, and that is the basicness, if that's even a word, of the Grand Exchange's functionality. They state that the GE lacks advanced features such as improved filters for new items, most rated items, price ranges and more. Which I guess would be nice additions, but in my opinion, the number one priority should be fixing the accuracy of prices, and then all the fancy stuff can be added on top of it. But truthfully, some of these would actually be really nice to have. Features like having Ctrl+C+V work, so you can just copy paste stuff from outside the game, or the ability for the Grand Exchange to recognize typos, so you no longer have to exactly know how something is spelled, because, let's be honest, some RuneScape items have some very weird spellings. Another great addition they are exploring is being able to search in a broader sense. Food, potions, gear, slayer. Categories that will come up with all relevant items to it. A feature like this would be huge for a new or returning player who might not know what piece of food they want to buy, but just want to explore their options. They can just type in food and then just kind of click through it and see what is best for them. There are some more features that they are considering on adding that I would deem less relevant than the previously mentioned ones, but I guess would also be nice to have as well. Things like adding filters for newest items, most rated items and price ranges. For example, you can type in magic gear between 1 mil to 5 mil, or the ability to have a sell button that will instantly sell the item for the average actively traded price, and of course the same thing for an instant buy option. The latter already kind of exists in the game, 1 GP roulette when selling or putting in 1 million GP for an egg. The way that system works currently is that it finds the market's current going rate and sells/buys it for that. This would make it more clear for the average player, but I wouldn't consider these huge priorities. Just like the other search filters, they would be super nice to have and I welcome them with open arms, but at the same time, like I mentioned a few times already, getting the prices accurate should be the number one priority, and everything else should be an added bonus. However, there's one thing that they didn't talk about in the blog and that I would love to see added to the Grand Exchange. The item sync feature from the old school RuneScape Grand Exchange. OSRS has a list of valuable items like Rage Unique, Gold Plus items, Slayer items and some more that jagex quote unquote buys back from the player using the GE tags and are then deleted from the game. This is in place to better control market supply, keeping old content relevant and prevent item devaluation. This system works by deleting a static, jagex specified number of that item from the market every single week and will only spend fees collected from the GE tags to accomplish this goal. This means that items only get deleted once it exceeds this static number. So, for example, 1 week, 100 Pandal's God Swords might be deleted from the game, and the next, there might be none. What this does in practice is that pieces of content that drop rare and high tier items stay relevant in the long term. Let's take the Sanctum of Rebirth as an example. It brought in a load of tier 95 main and offhand magic weapons during the first few weeks, and now they're worth less than 100 mil. Even though the content isn't being spammed as much anymore, the items are already in the game in plenty and the supply will only increase, in turn further decreasing the weapon's pricing. This feature would remove excess items, allowing prices to stabilize, protects PVM profitability long term and also creates a long-term economic balance. At first glance, this might look like, oh, price will just go up and PVM becomes less accessible for me, but in reality, this just means price will become more stable, and when you do PVM, you actually will be making money and not feel like you missed out because you couldn't do Sanctum Rebirth on release. How bad would it feel when you finally get that tier 95 drop and it's worth 80 mil? Shouldn't you be getting at least like 500 mil for it instead of that 80 mil? On top of that, a system like this actually doesn't even impact the average player because most mid-game gear isn't affected by this. So the gear you would be using when doing these endgame bosses is not actually changing. The path remains the same. You just have a more lucrative goal, and overall it is a more beneficial thing for jagex as well, as it allows them to better balance future content around stable pricings. Imagine if they release a new piece of content that also drops a tier 95 mage weapon. Why would you get it if it's 2 bill when the alternative, maybe slightly less powerful but still really strong, costs you 100 mil? You wouldn't, unless jagex makes it stupid overpowered and then you just create further power creep. So overall, this item sync would allow them to stabilize prices a lot better and keep content relevant for longer. And finally, to answer the question posed at the start of the video, will this make RuneScape a place of safer trading? Yes. Having more accurate prices that are more stable across the board allows players to have a better indicator on what they are spending their money on and give them less of a feeling of wasting it, putting the power back in jagex's hands regarding the pricing of things and not some nefarious people within the community that are trying to make a quick buck of unknowing players. And that's just my 2 cents. Let me know down below what you think, leave a like, subscribe, and my name's Chevalric, and I'll see you guys in my next video.